Everything is seen as a series of apparent causes and effects. And this is the issue. We have a tendency to believe that I did this, and then this caused this, and this caused this, and this keeps us here at this ordinary level of consciousness, because we're always in chronological time. When you shift out of chronological time into vertical time, eternal time, you begin to see that time is really something that doesn't even exist. It's not what we measure here on our wrist. It shifts around. It's like, even when I'm up here on a stage, time, it's like I've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, and that's like 5 minutes to me, 3 minutes to me. It is such a time of change for me in my life, and many profound things are happening faster than I can even keep track of them. I'll be sharing some of them here with you this morning. I have in front of me this beautiful rose, and the great poet from 800 years ago in the 13th century, his name was Jalaluddin Rumi, Mevlana, which means our master in Farsi. Jalaluddin Rumi, who was one of the great all-time poets and a divine spiritual master who walked among us 807 years ago. He was born. He once said that what was said to the rose that made it open was said to me here in my chest when I met you. And he was speaking about God. That there is something invisible, something formless, something perhaps spiritual, that is really moving all the pieces around and orchestrating everything in our lives, including us. Every single thought that we have, every desire that we have, are all placed there by something that is much more profound than we're even capable of being aware of. Because the problem for most of us is that we haven't been raised to believe that this divine intelligence that's in each and every one of us, which is capable of performing miracles and creating virtually anything we place our attention on, we've been raised to believe in our ordinariness and what's not possible and what limitations we have, how far we can go and how far we can't go. And it's taken me a long time to come to a place where I have an awareness that every single thought that I have that's placed inside of my head is not really placed there by me, by my human personality. It's placed there by something that I'm calling my impersonal personality. The same thing that's in each and every single one of us. And it's an exciting thing to come to, an exciting awareness to have. I have just completed there's another wonderful quote about a rose. That's so nice. It says that, and the day came, it was Anais Nin, who's a wonderful writer. She said, and the day came when the risk of remaining tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Like you get to a point in your life where staying the same is more difficult than making the shift into this spiritual awareness about what you're capable of. And I have a quote here from a great French philosopher. His name was René Descartes. He said, in order to reach the truth, it is necessary at some point in one's life to rid oneself of all of the opinions one has received and to rebuild one's entire system of knowledge from the very foundations. And this could be the moment, this could be the morning that you may make that decision. But it will come. And what it involves is something that I put down in, I don't know if many of you saw the recent public television special, but years ago, I was in a workshop out in Seattle, and there was a woman who was in the workshop. Her name was Portia Nelson. And Portia Nelson and all of us had been asked to take a card like this and to write down the 5 chapters of our life. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, but we were given, actually the cards were 3 by 5. These are 5 by 7s because they didn't want it to be real long. Just like, where have you gone in your life up until this point? And this is what Portia wrote. It was brilliant. It was published later, and I even paid her so that I could put it on my public television special about 10 years ago, and then she passed away, and I used it again. And I want to just share it here with you this morning. She said, Chapter 1 of my life. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, and it takes forever to find a way out. That's chapter 1. She said, Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault, and it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are wide open. I know where I am. It's my own fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. Finally, I walk down another street. Isn't that great? Yeah. And that's really, I guess, what I want to share with you, because many of you know I've just published a new book. It's called I Can See Clearly Now. And it's really a look back at, it's not a memoir, it's not an autobiography, but it's a look back at all of these significant events and the people and the circumstances that have shown up in my life, that as I look back, I can see much more clearly what was taking place, what was happening. And it's really my effort to ask you to do the same thing about your own life. Because our life is really like a tapestry. And even the darkest threads in a tapestry add beauty to that tapestry. And some of the threads in my life have been very dark and have been very painful. And yet it was in those moments that perhaps the most enlightening things started to show up in my life, and the shift away from the ego and all of my beliefs about how important I was, and into the awareness about a great truth that Pierre Teilhard of Chardin, this great French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church because of his strange points of view. He said that we are not here as a human being having a spiritual experience. That's not who we are. That essentially who we are is a reverse of that. All of us are infinite spiritual beings having a very temporary human experience. And when we begin to live our life from that awareness, from that knowing that who I am is infinite, because being able to answer the question, who am I, is one of the toughest things for any of us to really come up with something that is meaningful. If I were to ask you to write something similar to what Portia Nelson wrote, and ask you to define who you are, most of you would come up with, most of us would all come up with labels, what my name is and where I live and how many people I have in my family and what kind of job I have, what kind of interest that I have, and so on. But when the great teacher, one of the great teachers in my life, a man named Muktananda, was asked the question, "What is real, Master?" They said, "What is real?" His response, I've never forgotten it, and I've used it a lot in my life. He said, "That is real, which never changes." So there's something inside each and every one of us that is changeless, that is deathless, that is birthless. And if you think that it's your body, then your body's a whole lot different than mine. Because I have a picture of myself on my wall when I was 21 years old, when I was running, and that was over 50 years ago. And I look at that picture, and I can't find one single cell that was in that body from 50 years ago that's here today. This body is completely different. Every single cell of my being has changed. So that leaves out all of the other things that we define ourselves with, and we have to come to find the place within us that is deathless, that is birthless, that has no form, that has no beginning, that has no end. And it's something that's it's just the most important thing that you'll ever discover in your life, when that awareness becomes true within yourself. So as I was preparing to write this book, and it was June the 26th, it was 2012, almost 2 years ago exactly. My children, I have 8 children, 6 girls and 2 boys. They have been amongst my greatest teachers in my life. I can remember how they always kept me so humble and kept me close to the ground. I mean, anytime that I would raise my voice or say something that was inconsistent with what I was saying on television, or what I was writing in all of my books, and being a little impatient and perhaps losing my temper just a bit and saying something to the kids, I would have one of them just stand up, and they usually stood up like this with one hand on their hip, their eyes rolled back, 11, 12, 13 years old, and said, "I wonder what all those people would think of Mr. Positive if they could see him here this morning." That was one of the great ones I heard from my daughter Serena. Would you buy a book from someone who yells at his 10-year-old daughter? I don't understand that. Probably the greatest line I ever heard from any of my children. Now I would follow them around and say, "Come on, say something stupid. I really need some. I need some material." They were all sitting around the breakfast table one morning, all getting ready to go to school, and I was driving them to school. And I heard Serena sitting here, and her sister Summer. Serena was 11, I think, or 10, and her sister Summer, 2 years older, so she was like 13. And she looked over at Serena and said, "So, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes?" And I was over there, I was preparing breakfast for them at the toaster, putting down waffles in the toaster. And I said, "Where is this going?" And Serena responded, "That's the dumbest thing you've ever said. Don't even talk to me." This is 6:30 in the morning. She said, "That's just so dumb. Don't even talk to me. That's so ridiculous. What do you mean if I didn't have any feet, would I wear shoes? That's so stupid. Of course not." And Summer said, "Hey, don't get mad at me. I was just wondering why you're wearing that bra." So, Now, I could spend the rest of this morning telling you anecdotes like that. But that's kind of the way it was in our home. Great teachers, all of my children. And now they're writing their own books. I'm so proud of them, and creating their own CDs, and really making a huge difference in the world. I can say that about each and every one of them, that they all have a heart that is based upon living in a spiritual family. At any rate, it was June the 26th. It was 2 years ago. And I live on Maui. Thank you. And so everybody was coming for the summer, because they live in Florida and Minnesota and Ohio. They're spread around a bit. But they were all coming with their own families and so on. It was going to be a great time for everybody to be together. And I announced to all of them that I've written 42 books. I've been doing it since I was 15 years old. I wrote a novel when I was just in high school called The Anomalous Compatriot, which was horrible. Never published, but a part of what I can see clearly now is a reflection of that. If you want to be a writer, it's something that's in your soul. I call it writing from the soul, listening to that thing inside of you. In fact, the very last paragraph of this book says, in order to access guidance, I encourage you to make a commitment to be absolutely faithful to that which exists nowhere else but within yourself. This is the great secret for seeing ever more clearly and living your life from a place of passion and purpose. That there is a place that exists only within you, and to be faithful to that. So I have been doing that since I was 15 years of age, and been writing and writing and writing and taking on the task of writing. I write by hand. I don't use a machine. I put the pad of paper here, I put my left hand on the table, and with my purple pen, I write, and I allow for me it's like a circuit, and I allow it to flow through my heart and onto the page. And very often it takes 600, 700, 800 individual pages that you have to fill from in here or from out there, and you just have, you're really like a channel, very much like what's happening right now. Even these words that are coming out of my mouth, I don't own them. I don't even know where they're coming from. But I just listen, and I just allow it, and then I'm done with it. I give it to my editor, who incarnated here to be an editor. And I came here to be a writer and a speaker. And it's what my heart tells me to do. It's why I'm here this morning. So the idea of sitting down and writing another book it bears heavy on my soul. It's just exhausting. And it requires an enormous amount of discipline to sit there day in and day out. Because every book of every word that I've written in every book is something that has all come from me. I don't have anybody else to co-author with. I don't have anybody else that I assign to write it for me. It's all something that I take very personally and it's very important and significant to me. But it's also just so exhausting, and it just takes so much. And I was 72 years old then, and I just said, that's enough. And I told everybody, I'm not going to write any more books. I'm just done with that. And so I'm going to use my time to do some other things, which I'm really excited about. Some films, and other projects that I don't even want to talk about yet. So that was the 26th of June. On the morning of the 27th of June, I started writing I Can See Clearly Now. And I wrote, and I wrote, I wrote and wrote. I wrote every single day. Now, the children were all there. They're filling up my space there. In fact, they filled it up so much, we were all going to just kind of gather together because it's summertime, and you can sleep on air mattresses and sleep on the couches and so on, and just everybody's just all there, and it's just a great time for everybody to be together. I had to go out and actually rent a place in order to have the privacy to do the writing that was just so filling my soul. It was so significant that in one moment I had shifted away from it, and I thought that I was in charge of this. Now, I was being interviewed about, maybe 11 or 12 years ago. I was in New York City, and I was being interviewed by the New York Times, and also there was a man who was also being interviewed by the New York Times. His name is Arthur Miller, the great American playwright. Death of a Salesman, The Crucible, plays that I recommend you read now that you don't have to, and that you're not going to be tested on it at the end of the semester, but just because it's just so profound. He was just a great artist and a great speaker and a great teacher, and probably most famous for being married to Marilyn Monroe for a few years. So he was asked the question, as I was sitting there waiting, he was asked the question, are you working on another play? Now, at that time, Arthur Miller was 91 years old. I think he was 91 or 92. And so when the interviewer said, are you working on another play? His response was something that I've never forgotten. He said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that just resonated so deeply within me that there is something invisible that is directing this play that we call our life. And our human personality isn't the thing that's in charge of it at all. And when you begin to surrender to that, and when you begin to understand that, and when you begin to live from that place where you're surrendering to it and just allowing. Many years ago, my sister-in-law gave me a pillow that she crocheted, or I don't know if you crochet a pillow, but whatever it was, macrame or something. It's beautiful anyway. And it had the words written on the pillow said, I'm allowed. And I had that pillow just sitting there on the couch, and every time I would wonder whether or not I should do this or I can do that, or is this the proper thing to do, it was always those two simple little words. I'm allowed. I'm allowed to do whatever it is that doesn't interfere with anybody else's right to be allowed to do what they feel they can do. That's something that's within me, that I have that, and that I don't need permission. So this whole idea of being allowed. So when Arthur Miller said was so profound that it's like now I don't ever make any pronouncements about what I'm going to do or what I'm not going to do. Even when it comes to speaking and doing those kinds of things, because it's like you have to find a way within yourself to follow your excitement, to follow your passion. That thing that's inside each and every one of us that says, you have to do this, you have to go in that direction. There's, that if you look at the word enthusiasm and break it down, the word itself in Greek means entheos, which is God. Yasm means within, the God within. That there is something, if I could take any person that's sitting here in this room and sit down with you for less than an hour, I could find something inside of you that is so passionate, that is calling you to do, but that probably you have allowed yourself to have yourself be directed by something that perhaps your family or your parents or your culture has decided this is what you should be doing, this is how you should be going, this is the direction your life should go. But there's like this word dharma, and it means you're like your divine purpose, that you didn't show up here by accident. Nothing in this universe comes here by accident. And there's something in here that calls you to that excitement. And whenever it is that excites you inside of you, that you feel you have to do, but you've disallowed it because you've submitted to somebody else's idea of what your Dharma should be, is the cause for so many things that are troubling and difficult. So much illness, so much sickness that goes on in our world is because you have just not allowed yourself to be you see, we have a concept of ourself. And our concept of ourself is everything that we believe to be true about ourselves. And everything that we believe to be true about ourselves gets us to a certain level, a level that we call average, a level that is what we call ordinary. So if you want to transcend ordinary, if you want to transcend just being in the game rather than being in charge of the game, then you have to change the things that you've come to believe are true. And letting go of things that you believe to be true is one of the most difficult things you can ever encounter. In 1978, one of the stories that I tell in here, in 1978, I was 38 years old. I had written two books that both had topped the bestseller lists, Your Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings. And they had been published in many different languages around the world, and my ego was really on fire. I was doing the Johnny Carson show on a regular basis, and just having a lot of celebrity kind of status and so on. And because of just a couple of simple self-help books that I had written, which had attracted a lot of attention around the world, I was invited to Vienna in Austria to do a week-long university through an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. In order to be a member of the YPO, you had to be under the age of 50 and the president of a company that had more than, I think it was 500 employees. It might have been 50, I'm not sure. It was either 50 or 500. Anyway, you were president and you had to be under 50. And this was an organization that of some very powerful people. In fact, when I was there, the Vice President of the United States was actually speaking to that group with me as well. His name was Walter Mondale in 1978. And I was only invited because I had written these two books. And they put me on a panel in 1978 with two other people to speak to all of these presidents. There were maybe 700 or 800 of these presidents there. The other person on the panel was Virginia Satir, who had written a lot of books on family therapy and so on, and I was familiar with her work. But I was also placed on the panel in one of the most humbling experiences of my life, with a man whose books that I had not only read, but I had placed as required reading on every course that I taught at the university. I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City, and until 1976. So it was required reading. And when I was a doctoral student, I used this man's writing as a big part of my doctoral dissertation. His name was Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote a book that I think should be mandatory reading for everybody in this room. It was called Man's Search for Meaning. Logotherapy, which means knowledge. And Viktor Frankl was living in Vienna in 1939, and he was taken away by the Nazis and placed in a concentration camp, excuse me, in Auschwitz and also in Dachau. And he talked about what it was like to be under these circumstances, and he said that I had lunch with him immediately after the presentation. I gave my talk on Your Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings, which in German was called Der Wunderpunkt, Your Wondrous Points. And the amazing thing to me is that he had actually read this book in German. Just a brilliant, beautiful soul. And what he had endured, he lived through 5 years of being in these concentration camps as a brilliant medical doctor. His entire family was taken away and executed, except for one sister who emigrated to Australia. And he talked about the people who survived. And he said that we were given, he said, a bowl of dirty water with a floating fish head in the water. And that was our protein, and that was our meal for the day. And he said, for those of us who couldn't find beauty in the circumstances that we were in, we would find that they just simply wouldn't survive, that they couldn't find meaning in their life. And when we went to lunch after the talk, and I was just so humbled and so honored just to be in the presence of this beautiful man, that I actually went to Auschwitz, and I went to Dachau, and I write about my experiences in those places, here and I can see clearly now. They were clearly turning points in my life. Meeting Dr. Frankl was one of the most significant moments in my life. And what he said to me at lunch that day is something that I've never forgotten, and I share it with you. He said that when we are confronted with situations over which we have no control, we are challenged to change ourselves. And if we are not able to change ourselves, that is, what we have come to believe is true, then we will be stuck in ordinary, or we won't even survive when we're in circumstances that he was in. So it's what I throw out to you and what I say to each and every one of you as you as you contemplate and look back at your own life and all of the circumstances and the people that have showed up in it, that events such as my meeting with Dr. Frankl, which occurred just a short time after I had perhaps the most meaningful experience of my own life, the turning point in my own life, was in 1974, 4 years earlier, when, in August the 30th, I ended up at my father's grave through a series of just bizarre circumstances, which they're too involved for me to spend too much time on them here this morning. But I was sent there by some force in the universe in order to get my life off of the pattern that it was in. At that time, for my entire life, I had been filled with rage and anger towards this man called my father, whom I had never seen, because he walked out on my mother right after I was born in 1940, and her 3 children, myself and my 2 older brothers. So here she was, a woman with 3 children under the age of 4, with a depression going on and a war going on. My mother had one brother who was a prisoner of war in Nazi Germany at the time, and another brother who was in the military on a ship off near Japan. And she was all alone. And he just decided that he couldn't take on the responsibilities that were this, of taking care of a family. And so I was placed into a series of foster homes and orphanages until I was 10 years of age with my next oldest brother, David. And those 10 years were very significant years in my life. Many people ask me, were you filled with rage? Were you upset? Were you angry about that? And I said, the only thing I was ever angry about was my father. I just never understood how somebody could have 3 children and just walk away, never even make a phone call, never send a penny in help and so on. And I have a sense of that, everything that happens to us for a reason. I've often said, even to my kids, that, before I came into this world, I had a conversation with God. And God said, what would you like to do this time around in this incarnation? And I said, I get the choice? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'd like to spend this lifetime just teaching self-reliance. And God said, you want to spend an entire lifetime teaching self-reliance? I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'd like to do. And God said, well, then we better get your little ass into an orphanage. And you're going to spend a whole decade there, and you're going to learn to rely upon yourself, because there's not going to be anybody else there to do it for you. And once you have that emblazoned in your consciousness, it's the experience of something. It's the old Chinese proverb, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. There is no way to understand self-reliance until you learn to rely upon yourself, particularly in those kinds of circumstances. So that experience is a very profound and important experience to have. So that's how I look back on it. But I grew up with this rage in my heart. Dreams. My mother finally got her family back together again. She remarried my father in another body, an alcoholic. My father died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 49 as an alcoholic. My stepfather was a raging alcoholic, an angry man. I was 10 years old when I first met my oldest brother, and our family was reunited. And it was that deep anger that I had inside of me, that I would wake up and I'd be sweating, I'd be having a fight, I'd be punching him, I'd be just like, how could you? We even made a film about this called My Greatest Teacher, which I think is here. I think it's available. And so for some reason, my life was out of control. I would try to find my father. I would make phone calls. I even went to his mother's, which would be my grandmother, whom I had never met, but I found out that when she passed away, and I volunteered at the age of 15 to be a pallbearer at my grandmother's funeral, because I was finally going to meet my father after all this searching and so on, just 15 years old. I remember it well because I had a learner's permit, a driver's permit, and my older brother, I was allowed to drive for the first time all the way over to the other side of Detroit in order to go to this home, to meet this family that I had never known or seen, knew nothing about. And I was a pallbearer there, and I just kept waiting. I'm going to see my father. He's going to show up. This is going to be so fantastic. And he didn't show. He sent some paltry flowers from a place in West Blooming Rose, West Virginia, where he had hooked up, I think, with his 6th or 7th wife. And it was just another one of those disappointments. Then when I was 18 and 19, I went on a tour across the country looking for my father. There were different places and the clues, just so that I could have there was just something inside of me. My 2 brothers couldn't care less. It was not important to them at all. But for me, there was something that was calling me. And finally, I gave up the search, went into the Navy, spent 4 years in the Navy, got out of the Navy, went to school, went all the way through to graduate school. And then in 1974, when I was 34 years of age, I was invited to go down to Mississippi to do some work for the federal government in checking on whether the civil rights laws of the 1960s were being implemented. And after that was over, I went down to Biloxi, Mississippi, where I had heard that my father was buried. And I went to my father's grave, Melvin Lyle Dyer, 1914 to 1964. He had been dead for 10 years. I had found out about it from a cousin that I didn't even know I had. The reason I tell this story is because it was the most significant moment of my life. I went to the grave. I looked at the little marker on the ground that had his name, and I really went there to do something on his grave that wasn't about love and spirituality and kindness. I truly was going to go piss on his grave. That's really that's what was directing me to go there. I was just so filled with rage towards this man. And while I was on the gravesite and just standing there looking and talking to this man, I was hollering and I was screaming and I was full of rage. And finally, then I went back to the rental car. I had a rental car. Then I was going to fly back. I was going to drive it back to New Orleans and catch a flight back to New York City and teach at in the fall semester of 1974 at St. John's University in Queens, where I was an associate professor. And I got back into the car, and I started to drive away, and something called me back. That something is the thing that opened this rose. That something inside each and every one of us is who we really are. It's our true essence. This body of ours and all of these, and our mind and all of the things that we believe in and all of the labels that we have, all of this stuff is the ego. It's the false self. It's the part of us that really believes that who I am is what I have and what I do and what other people think of me. It's my reputation. It's my accomplishments. It's all the things that I own. All of it is irrelevant. It's not at all who you are. Who you are is not the personal self, it's the impersonal self. And that impersonal self, that's in every single one of us, that's in every flower, that's in every orange, that's in every living thing in this universe. It's in each and every one of us. And it is directing our lives, if we're only willing to listen. It called me back. I went back to his grave, and I stood there and completely changed my life in 2 minutes. I said, I don't even know where the words came from, honestly. I said, from this moment on, I send you love. From this moment on, I will only think loving thoughts of you. Who am I to judge you? Who am I to decide what you should have been? You did what you knew how to do, given the conditions of your life. And the conditions of his life as a young man were very horrible. I forgive you. I never had another dream about my father, even to this day. In fact, I always feel, whenever I tell that story, and I never know I'm going to tell it because I really believe that our desires, the things that are really pushing us to move in a certain direction, are placed there by God, or the Tao, or whatever you want to call this divine mind that's in each and every one of us. I left, got in the car, a completely changed man. I got back up to New York on the 1st of September, and I had 2 weeks before the fall semester started. The 15th of September is when the fall semester started, so I had 2 free weeks. And I got in an airplane, and I flew down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I checked into the Spindrift Motel, and I wrote a book in 14 days called Your Erroneous Ounce, from cover to cover. In fact, I wrote so fast and so furiously that one night, after writing all night, I looked all over this motel room because I had forgot to number the pages. And I had written like 70-some pages that night. It was just flying to me, you know. And I was pulling them out and writing, well, this must be page 41 and this is 42. But And then I flew back to New York, and everything in my life started to shift. I was overweight at the time. I started running. I was drinking. I stopped having alcohol. I haven't had alcohol in my body for over 3 decades now, almost 3 decades. I was in a terrible relationship at the time. That all shifted and changed. It just moved on. I started being conscious of being a more loving being. Your Erroneous Zones became one of the biggest selling books of all time. Today there's about 100 million copies of it in print in like 47 languages around the world. And it was the turning point in my life. And it all happened in one moment of forgiveness. So that when we carry around rage and anger and hatred and bitterness and fear and anxiety and stress inside of us through our thoughts, it's really impacting us in ways that we can't even begin to comprehend. When you let it go, and when you shift into a place of love, into a place of divine love, which is really what I want to speak about here today, this place called divine love. Rumi said that when you are born, a ladder is placed before you. And this ladder is placed there before you, he said, in order to help you to escape from this world. And there are various rungs on this ladder. And I have lived from a different place in my life once I've understood this. I was originally trained to be a Jungian analyst, like the study of Carl Jung. That's what I was doing my dissertation on. I changed it all when I met Dr. Abraham Maslow. But Jung had this comment. He said, from the beginning of my life, he said, I had a sense of destiny, as though my life was assigned to me by fate and had to be fulfilled. This gave me an inner security, and though I could never prove it to myself, it proved itself to me. I did not have this certainty. It had me. Does that make sense to you? I mean, let me say it to you again. From the beginning of my life, I had a sense of destiny, and this is true for every single one of us here. I have the mic, so this is what I really believe in, and I'm saying to you. I have lived from this perspective. It's what I can see clearly is all about. As though my life was assigned to me by fate and had to be fulfilled. I wonder how many of you feel that there's something, that you're here for something more than just what your ego's demands are. It's called the false self. You know, there's part of us that believes that I am what I accumulate and what I accomplish and what I own and what other people think of me, and I'm separate from everybody else. It's like the stuff that we've been trained on. It's what gets us to ordinary. We never get past extraordinary as long as we're hooked on this ego. This gave me an inner security, and though I could never prove it to myself, it proved itself to me. I didn't have this certainty. It had me. Now, I can't say that was true for me for my whole life, but I can say for sure it's true today as I look back and as I wrote the stories of my life. The first book that really impacted me in my life was read to me in the 4th grade. It was the first year I was living with my mother and my 2 brothers. And every day at the end of class, Mrs. Ingle would say to us, if you behave, if the class behaves, you will hear me read. I will read from this book. And the other kids didn't care so much about it. I was so profoundly influenced by this book that was being read by Mrs. Ingalls at the end of the day that I became the enforcer in the 4th grade class. And if anybody got out of line, it's amazing because as I started to write this, I could relive my entire 4th grade year. And I could see Fred Green sitting over here. And really, I could see Earlene sitting over here. And I could see Dick Powell sitting over here. When they would start talking, I would get up and say, shh, quiet. And for some reason, they listened to me. And they said, why? I said, because I want to hear what she's got to say in the book. And the book was called The Secret Garden. A book that they made a musical about, they've done a whole play about. But for me, it's like I would walk home from school, from Chester Arthur Elementary School, up Peerless Street to my home, and I would think about a secret garden. That a secret garden is something that we have inside of us. I've written 42 books. They're all about a secret garden, about a secret place inside each and every one of us that allows us to fulfill a destiny that is why we showed up into this world, why we went from the world of the formless into the world of form, why we got past that ego of ours. 2 years later, my stepfather, Bill, who was always drunk, and with 3 teenage boys now, it was a strange environment. I'll just put it that way. But he had a show that he would watch on Tuesday nights, opposite the Uncle Milty show, the Milton Berle show. You remember? I don't know if you're old enough to remember Milton Berle back in 1953 at the beginning of television. No, you're not. But it was the most popular show on television. But we didn't watch it at our home because he was a big fan of. He was a Catholic, and he was a fan of the guy who was on opposite Milton Berle. It was named Bishop Fulton Sheen. And Bishop Fulton Sheen had a show on every Tuesday night, and I got so excited and involved in watching this show that I used to take a yellow pad of paper and sit there and take notes and say to myself, I swear to you, this is true. I would take notes and say to myself, I could do this. I could talk on television and keep people interested. Well, since 1998, I've done 10 public television specials, speaking just like Bishop Fulton Sheen. And we've raised $250 million for public television, I'm proud to say. And it's not an accident that the show was called Life is Worth Living. You can YouTube it now, and you'll see you can see different excerpts of it, because when I was writing this, I went back and started watching it again and thinking, I became like this 13-year-old boy sitting there taking notes. Why was I so excited about something called Life is Worth Living as a 13-year-old boy? Because it was part of a dharma, part of something that I came here to be. I can see it now as I look back on every one of the circumstances, and by the way, it's true for every single one of you. When Bishop Sheen won the Emmy, the first Emmy Award was granted to Bishop Sheen opposite the most popular show on television, and Milton Berle was asked how did he feel about his competition getting the Emmy Award. His response was so great. He said, he had better writers. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. He said, I can't compete with them. What I did with I Can See Clearly Now is go through these life-changing, turning events that, as I look back on them now, I can see that there was something moving the pieces around in my life. You have to listen to your excitement, that thing inside of you that said, this is what I want to do. I have one of my daughters, she's sitting right over here, looking on her, doing something on her. She's tweeting something, yes, however that works. Her name is Tracy. She was born in the middle of the Detroit riots in 1967 on the 1st of August. And was working, gone to Michigan State, got a couple of degrees, was doing well, was an executive at a place called Best Buy in Minneapolis. Had all the benefits that you could want and everything, but this, when we would talk every single day on the telephone over and over again about, she said, I'm making good money, I've got good benefits, and it reminded me of something that happened to me in 1976 when I was driving down the Long Island Expressway, and I was on my way into the university, and I had just written Your Erroneous Zones. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to take it across the country. And I was driving in my Volkswagen down the Long Island Expressway, and something came over me. Something so overwhelming came over me that I actually had to pull over onto the shoulder of the Long Island Expressway and catch my breath because I was just about to receive tenure. Now, I don't know if you know what tenure is when you're a professor in a university, but everybody fights for it and tries to get it, and most of them want it. And it was something that I was going for as well. I had written 3 textbooks. I was really on my way. I was just written this Erroneous Zones, which was just published, but nobody knew anything about it. And I was about to be granted tenure, which means that I would be working at this university, in this office, teaching these same courses for the next 40 years of my life. And so many people were so excited because it was a very hard thing to get, but I was guaranteed that I was going to get it. And there was something inside here that just kept saying, is this what you really want? You really want to spend the next 40 years of your life doing exactly the same thing? Because I've often said, when I say I'm 74 years old, it's like, does that mean I've lived 1 year 74 times? Or have I lived 74 years in which I am growing and listening to that inner guidance that is directing me towards extraordinariness? In order to go past ordinary, you have to give up the things that you've hung on to in your life that you believe to be true. And I drove into the university. I went up to the Marillac Hall, the 2nd floor, went into Dean Sarah Fassenmeyer's office, and told her that I was going to resign, that I was giving up my professorship, which was a very cherished thing, I must promise you, in 1976. And I resigned. I went across the country with Tracy. She was 9 years old at the time, and visited every market on my own. And Tracy, I would tell Tracy that story. Now, Tracy was, this was, how long ago, honey? Was it 7 years ago? 10 years ago? 10 years ago. My goodness. And I said to her, I said, what do you feel inside? She said, I feel like I'm a designer. She said, I want to create. I feel for the planet. I don't think that we're treating our planet well. She said, I'd like to design like handbags or something to do with this kind of work. She said, but I can't give up the benefits, and I can't. It's like fast backwards to 1976, the tenure, the whole thing. It's like, are you listening? Are you listening to what's calling you inside? I said, I would just let it go. And she did. She started her own company. She's here. A lot of her products are here. It's called Urban Junket. And she has decided that, we talked about this problem with plastic in our world. Out on the Pacific Ocean, there's 1,000 miles. It's longer than the state of Texas across, that is filled with nothing but plastic in the ocean. And there's another one in the Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles across, all going down, levels. And it's from all of these things here. I usually protest these. I don't use these at home because we just fill these things up with water and then we just discard them. And we put them into landfills, or they end up in the ocean. We're just not as conscious as we need to be. She said, I can take plastic water bottles and recycle them and make beautiful purses out of them, which she has done. Not only that, but purses that have battery bags inside of them, so you can, there's just so many things. It's like, I'm a big fan because she let go of it and really let go of. She did the exact same thing that I did when I gave up tenure. And her purses are here. In fact, Tracy gave me this. Somebody's just written a book called Unlocking the Closet Door. Where are you, Chelsea? That's you? And that's so nice. She says, Dear Wayne, a year ago you planted the seed of inspiration in my heart from which this book was born. Now it is my gift to you. And she handed me this beautiful gift, this book that she published herself. Thank you so much. And what I'd like to do is give you a gift of one of my daughter's beautiful bags that are made of recycled plastic water bottles on the inside. And that's for you. Enjoy it. Thank you, Tracy. Stand up. Let people see you. That's my girl. You'll see her bags here over the weekend. Now, as I wrote I Can See Clearly Now, I was reading a book called To Know We Are Loved, which, by the way, is one of the most powerful things that you can ever know. It's just to know you are loved. It's really, truly amazing. Rashad Field, he said, if we stop for a moment, it is possible to perceive a pattern in our lives. The motivators that have influenced us become much more obvious. We are able to see life unfolding from both ends at once, coming into the present moment. But until we have got to a certain point of realization, this is not possible because everything is still seen as a series of apparent causes and effects. Now, when I read that, it was before I even started I Can See Clearly Now. That's part of a trilogy that Rashad Field wrote about. He's a Sufi. Let me read it again. If we stop for a moment, it's possible to perceive a pattern in our lives, which I have done, and I've seen the pattern from the time that I was listening to The Secret Garden, to listening to Bishop Fulton Sheen, to the years that I was in the Navy, to coming out of the Navy, going to work and putting myself through college on the GI Bill, going all the way through to a PhD, and all the books that I've written and so on. I look back, it's like in the first 5 books that I wrote, Your Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and The Sky's the Limit and Gifts from Micahs and What Do You Really Want for Your Children, there were, as I went through the indexes of these books as I was writing this, there was one reference to the word God, Spirit, higher consciousness, one time in 5 books. Then the next book that I wrote, you'll see it when you believe it, there were 39 references to God, Spirit, and higher consciousness. And then the next book I wrote had it in the title. There's a spiritual solution to every problem. Your sacred self, real magic. Now, there was never a time in my life when I sat down and said, okay, now I've written about psychology and I've written about these kind of things. Now I'm going to make a shift and I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to move into a different realm in my life. It didn't happen that way. What happened is that we are able to see a pattern in our lives, that life unfolds from both ends at once. Until we have gotten to a certain point of realization, this isn't possible because everything is seen as a series of apparent causes and effects. And this is the issue. We have a tendency to believe that I did this, and then this caused this, and this caused this, and this keeps us here at this ordinary level of consciousness because we're always in chronological time. When you shift out of chronological time into vertical time, eternal time, you begin to see that time is really something that doesn't even exist. It's not what we measure here on our wrist. It shifts around. It's like, even when I'm up here on a stage, time, it's like, I've been talking for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and that's like 5 minutes to me, 3 minutes to me. Because time, how do I explain this? Horizontal time is this causes this, causes this, causes this. But here you are, you're born, and you're going to have, you have something in you called a future pull, that you're not pulling things out of the past. You're pulling things out of the future as well. It's like the moment that you were born, your wisdom teeth are there. You can't feel them. You feel inside the gums of a brand new baby. You don't feel anything there, but they're not going to come out of the past. You're pulling those things. They're like 20 years into the future, but they're there. And this is true of everything. There's like this future pull, and you're pulling things out of the future, you're pulling things out of the past, and then you begin to realize that there's something called eternal time where everything is happening at once. And there is no past, there is no future, it's just all one enormous now. Because everything that's ever happened to you in your entire life didn't happen in the past. It happened in the present. It happened in the now. And everything that's going to happen to you isn't going to happen to you in the future. It's going to happen to you in the present, in the now. And getting to that awareness that there is no past and that there is no future, and that everything is just, as you become aware of this, it's like you can step back and you can get to a place that is called surrender. And you have a recognition that there's something personal in your life, your human personality, and there's something impersonal in your life that has nothing to do with your personality at all. I have come in contact with a book called The Impersonal Life. And it's one of those things that just comes into your life and it just changes your life around. It happened to me with the I Am discourses, which I spoke about, and why I wear the words I am on me, because it's the name of God. When Moses was talking to God on the Sinai, 1,300 years BC, 800 years before Lao Tzu, 1,300 years before the birth of Christ. And Moses is being directed by this burning bush that is not being consumed, and it speaks to him and says, "You are to go free your people." And Moses says, "Who am I to go to the Pharaoh and free my people?" And God speaks to him and gives his name for the first time. He says, Who shall I say sent me? And he said, "My name is I am that I am. And that shall be my name for all future generations." That's right out of the Torah, right out of the book of Exodus, chapter 3, 15. Every time you use the words I am, you're using the name of God. And you have to be so careful not to desecrate the name of God, not to blaspheme. Whenever you say I am weak, you're saying God is weak, because the I am that is inside of you is really God. That's what Wishes Fulfilled is about. It's this awareness that we carry God around inside of us, each and every one of us. And you know what? This is really brutally honest time for me. I have been trying to get in touch with that impersonal self inside of me, and not listen so much to the human personality, the Wayne Dyer, that has this resume, but to listen to it from a place of just divine love. Because when Rumi said, when we are born, a ladder is placed before us to help us to escape from this world, at the top of this ladder is something called divine love. And Carl Jung once said that at the same moment, he said, at the same moment that you're a protagonist in your own life and you're making choices, he said you're also the spear carrier or the extra in a much larger drama. He said, in essence, you are all doomed to make choices. Now, doesn't that sound like a paradox? If I'm doomed, I can't be making choices. If I'm making choices, I'm not doomed. So let me shift it for you. Just think of your body and nothing else for a moment. In a sense, you're doomed. I mean, I happen to get a 6'1", male, blue-eyed, Caucasian body with hair gone. But growing in my ears and growing on my shoulders and growing in my nose. And in essence, I am doomed to live in this body. I don't get to be in a female body. I don't get to be in a black body. I don't get to be in any other body other than the body that I'm in. So I'm doomed. But I also can make choices. And the choices that I can make are, how am I going to treat this body? How long is it going to live? And in the life that it does live, how healthy is it going to be? I have many, many choices to make, and I talked about my excitement, and I talked about Tracy's excitement. My excitement at this point in my life is to do something about what is happening in our world, particularly when we see so many of the changes that are taking place on our planet. We're seeing a huge obesity crisis on our planet. You just have to look around. If you don't, go to Disney World and just watch. I mean, people are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, the casket industry has really just blossomed, because they used to make caskets for, people that never more than 200 people. Now they got to make 400-pound people to put into caskets. Now, it doesn't, I speak about it as if it were not something significant, but I really believe our food supply is being tampered with in a way for profit that we really need to take a look at. When we start genetically modifying our foods, in fact, my daughter emailed this to me the other day. Monsanto has just released its first direct-to-consumer product. So no longer is Monsanto just a chemical company, now they're a food company. A genetically modified sweet corn containing Bt toxin designed to protect the plant by rupturing the stomachs of any insects that feeds on it. Monsanto claims that the toxin will break down before the corn makes it to your dinner table. But rats fed the GM, genetically modified corn, showed organ failure, and the toxin has been detected in the bodies of pregnant women. It's not like I'm saying that genetically modified food is good or bad. I have my own opinion about it. But I think I have the right to know whether that's something that I'm consuming or not. I mean, it's just such a simple thing. And yet the food industry is pouring millions of dollars into campaigns to convince people that this is something that isn't going to be a problem, and so on. I was up in Halifax last June. It'd be a year ago this month. Somebody's from Halifax? And I met two people that I hadn't seen in about a year and a half. And I looked at this couple, Anne and Mark, and I kept saying to them, I just can't get over how great you look. You look younger. Mark, you've lost your gut here. You guys just look fantastic. What's going on? What did you both do? And they said, well, we brought this fellow up here to Halifax in Canada and took him on a tour. And his name is Bill Davis. He's a medical doctor. He's a cardiologist in Milwaukee. And he's written a book called Wheat Belly. And he said, we did a conference on it, and we just decided to no longer eat wheat because it's all been genetically modified. And so many changes took place in this. And I said, well, I want to get a hold of that. So I read Wheat Belly, told all my children, told my wife, and I decided that I was going to go gluten-free. Yeah. Now, some people think, well, this is just a new fad and so on, but I don't think it's a fad at all any longer. When I read Wheat Belly, I was so taken by it that it hit me in this place in here. And what the thing I learned from the impersonal life is that every desire that we have, see, we get many ideas. They coming at us all the time, all these thoughts coming into our mind. Thought. And then a thought sometime will come into us that is attached with a desire. And when that desire is strong and you can't ignore it and it's something that you have to do, that isn't your personal life. That isn't your human life that's doing this. That is the same intelligence that opens the roads. That is the same intelligence that keeps the planet in alignment. That is the same intelligence that grows your fingernails every single night. You go to bed and you say, all right, I'm not going to grow these fingernails. I'm tired of having to cut them all the time. I'm going to stop this. And you have absolutely no decision. Your human self can't do anything about it. There is an intelligence that grows your fingernails. For some of you, it grows your hair. For Danny and I, it doesn't, but that's all right. It's like understanding this intelligence that's in every single one of us and every desire that we have, so that when I have a desire, like my desire to sit down and write, I can see clearly now, isn't something that my human self decided on. I woke up on the 27th of June, and it was just overwhelming. And when you surrender to it, and when you start to listen to it, and you allow it to be the focus of your life, it's just amazing the things that begin to happen for you. And what I did with the gluten-free thing is I looked at that and I decided we share the same the same genes. 7 of our human genes are identical with wheat. 7 of them. 11 of them are with bananas. You know, like there's 11 genes in a banana that are the same in a human being, but there's 7 that are in wheat. And wheat, when we were growing up, it was amber waves of grain. Remember? And, you know, it's like now wheat isn't produced like that. It's dwarf wheat. It's grazed on something called calories per acre, how much profit is in it, and it's been genetically modified so that the next generation of seeds for the wheat isn't something that's going to create the next generation like God intended everything to be. Every single organism on the planet, the seed from this generation produces the next generation and the next and the next. It's been going on as for eternity until Monsanto has come along and companies like this, and now they have patents on these seeds, all of which have been approved. In Washington, in 1970, there were 175 lobbyists, 175 paid lobbyists to influence legislation. Today, there are 13,750 paid lobbyists who are there. There's one lobbyist for every single congressman from the food industry, from the drug industry, and so on. And things like patenting a seed, that you get to own the seed, and the next generation has been stopped from reproducing it. So if you plant it in the ground, it won't grow. You have to go to Monsanto to do it. Anyway, this could become a rant, all right? But I'm very, very passionate about this, and it's a desire that's just been placed in me. Thank you. So since going gluten-free, I have taken off all of whatever is around the wheat belly, because if you take 2 slices of whole wheat bread, just 2 slices, it's the same identical thing in your body as taking 6 tablespoons of pure cane sugar and eating it. 2 slices of whole wheat bread, 6 tablespoons of sugar. Check it out. So we've been sold a bill of goods on healthy grains and all of this kind of stuff that we're pouring into our bodies. And, you know, my own mom, who passed away, it'll be 2 years now, July the 22nd. And in her last couple of years, she was 96 years old. She kept saying, Wayne, she said, I exercise, you know, and she did. She walked all the time and she exercised. And she said, and I hardly eat anything. But every day, I said, well, what do you eat, Mom? And she said, well, I have a bowl of cereal in the morning with whatever it is, was all wheat. And I have a sandwich of whole wheat in the afternoon. And she said, and it just keeps expanding and expanding. How many people have said this to me? I exercise, I eat, I don't overeat, I'm very careful, but I'm always bloated, and I can't lose the weight. We got a whole culture of people. We got 1 out of 3 people who are obese in our country. 1 out of 3, that's a major shift. We have 1 out of 3 people by the year 2040, the year I turn 100, who are going to have diabetes in our country. It's an epidemic. In 1972, 1 out of every 15,000 births had signs of autism. Today, it's 1 out of every 68 births. In 1 generation, what is going on if we don't have to me, it's like, duh, which is what my kids all say, duh? Have you looked at the food supply? Have you looked at what we're eating? So next, when I leave here today, I go back to Maui, and then I'm going to Baltimore. And the week I'm in Baltimore on the 18th of June, I called Bill Davis, who is responsible for me going on a gluten-free, not only gluten-free, but become very, very conscious of eating organically and eating really healthy things. It's changed everything in my life. We're doing a public television special together. I called him up and told him how, yeah. That's my rant, all right? There's three kinds of love, according to Peter Dunoff, who was a great Bulgarian spiritual master who died in 1944, who speaks to me on a spiritual level on a regular basis, who's written over 250 books on divine love, on a very special kind of love. And he said that there's as we move up this ladder towards divine love, which is where we get to extraordinary, where we begin to perform miracles that we never thought were possible, where we begin to heal ourselves and heal others, where we begin to make conscious shifts in our world. We move up the ladder. I always say that I Can See Clearly Now is the story of a man who has listened to the internal callings and have been willing to do it. Like, what are you willing to do? That's the bottom rung of the ladder. What are you willing to do? You get this calling. You know you're here for a reason. There's something that calls you to fulfill your own dharma, to fulfill your own destiny, and you've spent so much of your time being consumed with what other people think and how well they're doing it, and should I go this way or that way? What's everybody else going to think? Or it's going to be too expensive, or I can't afford it, or things aren't going to things aren't going to fall in line for me. It's not as easy as you say, and so on. You have to have a willingness inside of you. That's the bottom rung on the ladder. How willing are you? When the time came for me to leave the academic world and to leave a tenured position as a full professor behind, I was told over and over again that the only way you can get your message out is to get on national television. But nobody on national television wanted to hear from me. But there's another way to reach everybody in the country. Are you willing to do it? 1976, I packed my 9-year-old daughter and her girlfriend, Robin, and my wife, and we went across the country to meet every single person. Thoreau once said that if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams, that's what's in your imagination. If you advance confidently in your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. It will chase you. You've got to stop chasing it and just listen to your dreams. Listen to what's in your imagination, because the greatest gift that any of us have ever been given is the gift of our imagination. It is there that we can create virtually anything that we place our attention on. But we don't do that. We ignore it. We say instantly, no, I'm not willing to do that. No, that would be too tough. I can't move to another city. I can't. And instantly, you move back into ordinary, into just being a fringe dweller, just sort of dwelling on the fringe of higher consciousness, but never being able to take the step. You have to not only be willingness, but you have to have a sense of determination. As you read I Can See Clearly Now, you will see a profound sense of determination inside of me, something that I just couldn't turn it off. You also have to have a sense of fearlessness, letting go. Letting go. In the recovery movement, we say you let go and what? You let God. Whatever you want to call that divine, invisible intelligence that opens the roads, whatever you want to call that, it doesn't matter. You can call it the Tao. I lived for a year as a Taoist. In the year 2005, the year I turned 65, I gave up everything that I owned. Gave up all my clothes. I gave up all my possessions. I gave up all my furniture, all the things that I accumulated, all the records that I had, all the awards that I had been given. Because I heard one time someone say, when you talk about awards, that our awards are like hemorrhoids. That sooner or later, every asshole gets one, so I had plenty of awards. I gave them all away. And I went off to Maui, and I lived as a Taoist. I practice this. If there's anything that I encourage you to get, it's this little book called Living the Wisdom of the Tao. It's the Tao Te Ching. It was 81 verses written 2,500 years ago, 500 years before the birth of Christ. Lao Tzu gave us this great wisdom. And the opening line of the Tao says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. As soon as you try to put a name on it, as soon as you try to explain it, you've lost it. Because you've left the world of oneness, which is perfect love, which is what God is, which is what's inside each and every one of us. We all have God inside of us. We all carry it around. We're all sparks of God. The minute that you try to label it, you've got the thing and you've got the label. Now you've got two-ness. I love this. This is from the Gospel of St. Thomas, which was discovered in Nag Hammadi in 1945 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all lived like between 80 and 120 years after the birth of Christ. So all of their direct quotations were recollections from 80 to 120 years before. The Gospel of St. Thomas, discovered in Nag Hammadi, was carbon dated back to the exact time that Jesus was walking on this planet. That's 80 years before Matthew. He said, when you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, and the above as the below, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female not be female, then you shall enter the kingdom. It's like trying to imagine, you know, if I say to you, what's the opposite of joy? You would say sadness, right? We all, you know. But imagine a world in which there is no opposite. A world in which my friend I'm staring at right now, Anita Morjani, who experienced all of this firsthand, and you'll hear from her this afternoon. She's one of my heroes. I sought her out. She's written a book called, hey, come on up for a moment, Anita, just for a second. Anita has written a book called Dying to Be Me. And she had terminal cancer, like really terminal cancer. She had like minutes left. And do you have a mic? Do you have a mic? Is there a mic? Oh, I'm going to need a mic. Oh, Skyzy? Yeah. Hi, sweetheart. How are you, my love? Mm-hmm. Tell them just a little bit about what I'm talking about with this oneness idea, that there is a world beyond this world in which there's no opposite of love, which is just nothing but pure love. When we think of love and its opposite, we think of hate and revenge and fear. But she experienced in Dying to Be Me, which is just mandatory reading. I mean, it's an assignment, okay? You have to read Dying to Be Me. It's one of the greatest books that I've ever... As a matter of fact, I just had a very, very dear friend who lost a little baby to an accident. And I didn't know what to say to her. It was just the mother and the father both came to my apartment on Maui, and just in deep sadness. I had just met this she was only 14 months old, and the only thing I could say to them is like, just read this. Read this. This will give you some peace. And I just talked to them last night, and they said it brought them so much peace, just an awareness that there's something so grand and beautiful on this other side. What about oneness, Anita?
What I experienced on the other side, actually what happened is on February the 2nd.
Can you hear? Can you all hear?
Is the mic
okay.
on? On February the 2nd, 2006, that was supposed to be my last day here in the physical body because I was dying of end-stage cancer. My organs had shut down and I was in a coma. And the doctors told my family that I wasn't going to come out of the coma. But what I experienced while I was in the coma was I was feeling amazing and I was free from my body. I was no longer in my body. I could see my body on the bed And I'll describe more when I speak about it this afternoon.
But your body weight, what was your body weight down to? About 80-some pounds?
85 pounds. And I was a skeleton. I was literally a skeleton, but my lungs were filled with fluid, and I hadn't been able to walk. I was breathing with the aid of oxygen, and then my organs shut down, and I went into a coma. And but it appeared that I was in a coma, but I was actually aware of everything that was going on around me. And how I experienced myself, well, first of all, I felt that I was loved. I knew I was loved unconditionally. There was this feeling as though I was just embraced or encompassed by love. It was nothing like what I had ever felt in physical life ever before. It was just like you describe, a love that has no opposite. And the way I describe it is that I was aware that I was without my body. But what I learned in that realm is that when I'm without my body, I'm also without my gender, my culture, my religion. I'm without my race, my color, and I'm also without all the beliefs and the cultural filters that I've accumulated and the layers of beliefs and filters that I've accumulated over a lifetime. All of it falls away with the body. And the only thing that's left is just pure essence. And that pure essence is pure God, or it's pure love. We can give it any name we want, but it's just pure essence, pure love, and it's who we are. Each and every single one of us, it's who we are at our core if we didn't have all these layers and layers.
So beautiful. Thank you, Anita. She's going to be speaking this afternoon at what time?
At 4:40 this afternoon.
Thank you, my love. Thanks for coming. God bless you. I love you so much. Thank you. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to be talking in a moment about desire, but I want to tell everyone, when you get your new purse, stick this in it, all right? How's that, Tracy? Some call it the wisest book ever written. 81 verses. I wrote 81 essays on it and lived it for an entire year. But it's something that I refer to every day. I have it in my glove box, and I open it up, and I just always get a lesson from it. Living the wisdom of the Tao, very profound teaching. And thank you, Anita. And she, you probably saw her on my public television special. A desire was placed inside of me. And this is what I want to talk about in a few moments. It's this whole idea, the difference between an idea or a thought that you have. Even your thoughts are not things that your human personality are capable of doing. You can't create a thought. We think that we create all of our thoughts, but try to get one. Try to find out what it is. Try to go inside. We can find the command center inside of the brain where thoughts originate. We can find all of that, but we can never, ever, no matter how scientifically pure our technology is, we can never find the commander in the command center that says, I think I'd like to wiggle my finger. I think I'd like to move my hand. I think I'd like to do this. Think about this. Think on this strongly, because this is where I am at in my life right now. Every desire that you have is placed there by your impersonal self, the same one that opens the roses, the same thing that grows your fingernails. And when those desires are so strong that you can't resist them, that you can't stop thinking about them, that they're just hanging on, they're there with you, whatever they are, that's the impersonal part of you speaking. When I first became acquainted with Anita's work through something that was posted on the internet that someone sent me, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I called my publisher. I said, we have to find this person, because her name wasn't even on it. It just said Anita M. So I didn't even know her last name. But I sought her out, and she will tell you that there were so many synchronistic kinds of things that were taking place to bring us together. I called the publisher and said, I want to publish her book. And I want to write the foreword to it, and I want to introduce her to America. I want to put her on my public television special. This is before she even had any idea that I was so aware and so conscious of these things that showed up in my life. It's like everything, and I can see clearly now. As you look back on it, you see so clearly, oh my God, this is what was pushing me at this time. But you know what? The now is the same as all of those other times. There's something talking to every single one of you, whatever those desires are. And it manifested in now, and everything that I had told you, Anita, about what would happen. Your book would be on the New York Times bestseller list. You'd be lecturing all over the world. It would be published in many different languages. You'll become a worldwide, because there was a desire placed inside of you, and there was a desire placed inside of me that has nothing I could do anything about. I couldn't stop it. And that desire is so powerful, and I want to speak more on it in a few moments. But before that, I want to bring us to the top of the ladder. Willingness, determination. These are the core things that have occupied my entire life. I had a quote. I saw it this morning for the first time. I was up early this morning meditating about what I wanted to speak about today, and I was reading Thoreau because I've been asked to do a film about Thoreau, to be in a movie called Walden Pond, about my hero from Concord, Massachusetts. On the 4th of July in 1845, he opened a cabin on Walden Pond and lived there for 2 years. I tell a story in there about how Thoreau, when I was 15 years old and being kicked out of high school because I was practicing civil disobedience, and then I read an essay by Henry David Thoreau called On the Necessity of Civil Disobedience. And I thought, as I presented that to the principal, that I would be because they had actually left that book on there for me to read while I was waiting. I took it in and showed them. I said, this is what I was doing. They said, it doesn't work, and they still expelled me. He said, I want to live deep, and I want to suck out all the marrow of life, and not when I come to die and discover that I have not lived. I love that. I want to live deep and suck out all of the marrow of life, not when I come to die and discover that I have not lived. I read a book by a woman in Australia named Bronnie Ware called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. She was a hospice nurse, and she would interview and talk to people for 8 years. She kept notes on what are your top regrets? What do you regret? Talking to people that died. And the number one regret of dying people is, I wish that I would have had the courage to live the life that I knew I should rather than following somebody else's ideas. The number one regret. And we're all facing that awareness, that reality, that we're going to leave these bodies. Anita had the incredible blessing to be the only person, perhaps in all of humanity, who has ever been at that far gone end stage of cancer and even lived, let alone 5 weeks after she came out of the coma. They couldn't even find any cancer in her body in 5 weeks. And in 5 days, it had all gone, 50% of it had disappeared. All of her medical records are in there to validate it. I've seen the photographs, and yet she came back. There was a desire placed in her, not by her human self, but by this oneness. It's like when you're living with the source, there are no opposites. If you lived on the sun, if you had a house on the sun, be a little warm, but if you did, would you have a concept of darkness? Would anybody ever be talking on the sun about darkness? Why not? Because when you're with the source, there are no opposites. There's only oneness. And the sun is the source of all light on our planet. And when you are with the source, there are no opposites. But beyond the sun is God, or the Tao, or the grand mind, the divine mind. And when you are with the source, there is only love. That's what I got out of reading Dying to Be Me. That it was just nothing but pure love, no opposites. She saw her father there, who was filled with resentment and anger because she had left an arranged marriage in India 3 days before the wedding. And Indian weddings, if you've ever seen Indian weddings, they go for weeks. And she left it all, and she thought when she saw her father, and she said all she saw with her father was pure love. You don't have to die. You don't have to leave this body in order to understand and know this thing called pure love. At the top of this ladder is this divine love. And Dunov said there are three kinds of love. There's human love. Human love is a love that changes and varies. I love you today, not so much as yesterday. I love you more, I love you less. You didn't do this, you passed that. My love changes, it varies. And then there's spiritual love, which is a love that never changes. It's like the love we have for our children. It's the love that we have for, our partners, whatever. It's a love that doesn't change, but it varies, It's not quite as high as it was yesterday when you didn't bring me anything for my birthday, or when and if you have 8 kids, you love them, but there are times when it's higher than when it's not, and so on. But Dunov spoke about another kind of love. It's called divine love. And this is a love that never changes and a love that never varies. It's all there is. And when you're with the source, when you come to know the source, and my beautiful daughter, this is the very first time this book has ever been out. I just saw it for the first time yesterday when I signed some of them here. It's called Don't Die With Your Music Still in You. My daughter Serena, the same one who was told, "Why are you wearing that bra?" And it's called My Experience Growing Up with Spiritual Parents. It's like she took those 10 secrets for success and inner peace that I wrote about, because those were the 10 ideas, most important ideas that I wanted my children as my legacy to know and live from. I think she really wanted to subtitle this My Experience Growing Up with Weird Parents, because, she said that in our home there was a 5-letter word that begins with B that no one was ever allowed to say. And it doesn't rhyme with which. It's called blame. We are never allowed to blame anyone for anything going on in ourselves. That was a word that just wasn't allowed in our house. And she wrote about all of the experiences that she had, but one of the things that she wrote me a letter, and she put it in the introduction from Serena. And I want to share this letter with you. It says, "Today I sat behind you in Ephesus, Turkey. I went to Turkey with her and another group of 300 people on a tour of the Mediterranean, a spiritual tour of the Mediterranean, and we went to the place where the mother of Jesus lived for the last 30 years of her life, last 34 years of her life. And I was giving a talk there on the 805th anniversary of Rumi's birth, September the 30th, 2012. She said, "Today I sat behind you in Ephesus, Turkey, while you gave a lecture to a few hundred people who had traveled from all over the world to hear you speak. I was overcome with emotion as I saw you standing there fulfilling your Dharma while touching the lives of so many. I know you as my father, but you have always been a teacher to me as well. You have taught me that the solution to all of life's problems are inside of me, and that I only had to go within, be silent and present, and know that all is well. You never told me how to live or what to think or what to believe in. Instead, you showed me how to make each step a prayer, and each word a word of love. You taught me about Rumi, St. Francis, Hafiz, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Mohammed, Saint Germain, Neville, and so many others. You taught me to believe in magic and miracles, and you showed me how to be in awe of the awesome world we live in. Since the time I was brought into this world, I knew that I was safe to be exactly as I was, and that whoever I was, that I was a perfect creation of God. You told me that I was God, and that it was God that looked out from behind my eyes. I learned from you that I was the master of my own fate, the creator of my destiny. Of all the lessons, of all the lessons I have learned, the thing that hit me the hardest was when you said that I am God. Could I really be a spark of God, a perfect creation put here on earth with a purpose? You say this all the time, but I've always struggled with it, especially since school and society were telling me otherwise. I doubted myself, I felt inferior, and I worried that I needed to apologize to something for even contemplating this idea. I have felt unworthy, undeserving, and unsure. Although you gave me great tools, I still had to figure out how to use them on my own. Now I understand that God is love, that God is beauty, and that God is truth. You told me I came from an infinite space of perfection, and that I will return to it one day. Slowly, I'm beginning to understand. People love you so much, and yet to me, you've always been Dad. You drove me to school each morning, you taught me how to swim and to ride a bike, you read me stories, and you came to all my plays. As I have grown, you have encouraged me to trust my inner callings and to go after whatever it is that excites me. You believe in me, Dad, and I love you so much for that. What do you say to someone who gave you life and then showed you how to live it? You say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Serena. Now I have a friend who's here today, and he's, where are you, Alex? Oh, there it is. And he's got a specialty. He's a musician, a very accomplished musician, and he takes letters that people have written, and he writes songs based on the letter. It's called For the Sender. He's a brilliant writer. I say it as an endorsement for his book. This is a beautifully written book with powerful message. I read it in one sitting and absolutely loved it. Here's a sample of his writing. He said, me and the leaves are barely hanging on when I get this letter. Autumn is painting change everywhere, and I am turning over a season of my own, although the trees are doing a better job of letting go than I am. Leaves and dreams alike are either dying on the limb or already gone, and so is she. It was a letter, a painful letter that he received. He's a beautiful writer, as you can tell just from that one paragraph. And when I showed him that letter, when Serena showed him that letter that she had written to me, he said, why don't I write a song, call it? And he did. And I've asked him to come up here and sing it for you, or play it for you, and asked my daughter, Sky, who's just published, this is like the Wayne Dyer show here today, and the Wayne Dyer family. Her brand new CD called Letting Go, which has this song in it. And by the way, Serena is getting married on the 1st of July, and in Maui. And I am going to perform the wedding ceremony just as I did for Sky and her husband, and as I did for Ellen DeGeneres and Portia. 3 weddings. And the song is called This Gift, and it's a gift based upon the letter that I just read to you. If you'll come up, Sky and Alex. And this song is going to be sung, it's going to be the song, I guess there's a time in the weddings. I don't do weddings very often. But the father dances with the daughter. Well, this is the song that Serena has selected. Where do you want me?
I want to come play it.
I know.
Nobody's invited me.
So this is Alex. He's going to be actually performing, and you'll want to come to both him and, is it today?
Yeah, 5:30.
5:30, and you're, what time, Anita? 4:40. Well, this afternoon is going to be fabulous. These are all standing ovation places, I promise you. And this is my beautiful daughter,
Hello,
Sky, who's going to sing this song, and then she's going to come back and close at the end. So let me get comfortable here. There we go.
Make sure too. There you go.
All right. Thank you. I don't need your help, smarty pants.
All right. You ready? Okay.
I love you, dear. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Okay. Get your shit together, as my kids say. Come on, Dad. You can do it. You see, inside each and every one of us, there's something called the soul. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's like the Tao. As soon as you put a name on it, it's not the same. But this soul of ours, this invisibleness, this infinite intelligence that we're always connected to, that is doing all of these things called aging your body, growing your fingernails, and all of the things that it is doing, independent of your opinion about it. There's also something inside of you that is not finite. Body is finite. All your possessions are finite. Everything up here on this stage is finite. That means it had a beginning. It means it ends someplace. But inside of us, there's something that is the opposite of finite, which is infinite or infinite. And it has no beginning. And because it has no beginning, it has no end. Emily Dickinson, the great poet, said that this quiet dust, holding up a handful of dust, the beautiful Emily Dickinson. If you haven't seen the film The Belle of Amherst, watch it, by Julie Harris. It's one of the, I ordered it the day Julie Harris died, about 6 months ago. She was in her 80s. The Belle of Amherst. And I watched it in my own, all alone, in my home on Maui. And when it was over, the whole audience gave her a standing ovation because it's a film of a Broadway play. And I stood up with the audience. I was just compelled. I applauded for at least 10 minutes. I was so incredibly moved and touched by Julie Harris's performance. I just couldn't imagine that someone could know that and become that character so beautifully. Emily Dickinson was a great poet. She said, this quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased, like these. When my mom passed away, they gave us an urn, as she was cremated, and they gave us an urn of her ashes. It was dust. And I looked at my two brothers and I said, surely this isn't Mother. This isn't the woman who had to struggle the way she struggled and deal with the things that she had to deal with in her life, this beautiful soul. You know, Longfellow said that life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returneth, was not written of the soul. The soul is beyond all of that, because it has no beginning and it has no end. And something that has no end means it has to keep what? It has to keep growing. It has to be. It just continues to grow. I wrote these words out about the soul. The ideal of the soul, the thing it asks for, is neither knowledge or light or happiness. The ideal of the soul is space, immensity. The one thing it needs is to be free to expand and to reach out to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity. It's miserable when it's circumscribed and restricted in any way. That's what's going on inside of you. It has a theme song. It was sung by Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and Bing Crosby. You all know it. It's the theme song of the soul. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Let me ride through the wide open spaces that I love. Don't fence me in. You know, before I had any children, I had 8 theories about how to raise children. I even wrote about them, all right? Then I had 8 children, and now I have no theories about how to raise children. But one of the things I know for sure about raising 8 children is that nobody likes being told what to do. That little voice that you've all heard that says, "You're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. I'm my own boss. I can think for myself." That's not the bratty outbursts of a spoiled child. That's someone who's saying, "I have a soul. I don't want to be fenced in. Don't put me in a box. Don't make my life what yours wasn't. Don't tell me what I should be or can't be." It's the infinite within each and every one of us. That's the soul. And every single one of us has it, and none of us wants to be put into a box. And all we want to do is continue to grow. And one of the things I can tell you at this age of 74 is that it's just operating in me as full-time as it possibly could be. I am in a constant state of growing now, and almost an elevated state of growing, just really moving, and things are coming to me so rapidly. Like this book, The Impersonal Life, and another book. Maya Angelou passed away this past week or so. And I put on my Facebook page my experience with Maya Angelou back in the 1970s. We were on a radio show, the Owen Spann Show, on KGO in San Francisco. And a caller called in and said something that she was all upset because she wasn't getting the attention that she wanted. And she said, I never forgot it, because she said, the bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song, And I encourage everybody to honor Maya Angelou by singing your song, and while you're singing, make it a love song, because that's what she was about. Her biography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, because it has a song, not because it's demanding an answer. There are no answers, but we all have songs that we have to sing, and we don't want to, as Serena said, die with our music still inside of us. So as you listen to your soul, as you listen to this invisible part of you, as The Impersonal Life came to me, this book was written in 1914, 100 years ago. And it was published under the name Anonymous until 1940, which is the year that I was born. And what it is speaking to you as if the impersonal part of you, the part that opens the flowers and grows the oranges, as if it were speaking to you and talking to you, this impersonal part of you that's in every single one of us and in all of the creations in the universe, in this infinite universe that has no beginnings and has no ends. We're beginning to get scientific validation of this infiniteness of the universe. And when you just think about it logically, where could it end? I mean, what's at the end? Is there a wall? And how thick is it? And what's on the other side? The concept of infinity is a very difficult concept for us to get. It's why the concept of death is so difficult for us, and why, when I was talking to my friends who lost their little 14-month-old girl to an accident, we can't grasp this idea that Abraham said. I had a conversation with Abraham, a 3-hour conversation that's coming out soon, and it was, and she said that if you really understood what was on the other side for you, which is what Anita gives us a glimpse of, is that it is so incredibly blissful and perfect, and there is just no opposite there. And to come to know that. But I have been trying to get a hold of this impersonal self and to get a sense of it, to feel it in my own heart. And what it involves changing certain things about ourselves. Like the day that Serena sat behind me in Ephesus while I spoke to these people at the home of the Mother of Jesus, which was a significant moment in my life, to be there in this place and to be giving a talk on Rumi. We stopped at the, there were 10 buses, 35 people, there's 350 people, 10 buses of 35 people. And we pulled into this area. It was at the end of September, very hot, very desert-like, in this city that is being excavated, an ancient city that was at the time of Jesus and before. 15% of it has only been excavated, so it's still 85% underground. And just to walk among those streets and all of that, and then to see this home where, when Jesus was about to be crucified, he said to John, "Please take care of my mother." And this, according to all the historical documents that they have, this is the place, in this home, in this stone house in Ephesus. And we all stopped for a bathroom break, and we went into men all went into this gigantic urinal, and the women all went and got lined up in this other place, and there were a big line of women, and the men were just going in and out. It seems to be how it works. And so I went into this place, and I was leaving, and I washed my hands, and there was an old man in there, probably younger than me, but he was an old man. I was going to say 67, 68, but, that's like younger than me. And he had a roll of paper, like paper towels kind of thing, and he was tearing them off, and he was very dirty. And the place, you can imagine it's in Turkey. At the end of summer, the temperature outside is about 90-some degrees. You can imagine, just try to take a whiff of what you think it must be like in this place. And this man was in there all day, and he would hand people these pieces of paper. And the old subconscious mind training, see, we all have this subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is operating overtime all the time. It's the stuff that made us believe that God is something that's outside of us, and the idea that God is within us, even though all the spiritual literature, including the Old Testament and the New Testament, is it not written in your laws that I have said you are gods? You are all children of the Most High. You are all gods. That's from the Psalms. That's from the book of John. Those are the words of Jesus. And there's many, many others. But we still have come to this conclusion that God is something external to ourselves. So our subconscious mind has all of this conditioning that we have to overcome. And you can do that. You can even do it tonight as you go off to sleep. The last 5 minutes before you go off to sleep, listen to what it says in the book of Job. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instructions. I read that too fast. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instructions. That's from Wishes Fulfilled. That's from the book of Job. So that when you're about to go off to sleep, you're going to enter into your subconscious mind and marinate there for the next 8 hours. So whatever it is that you program yourself for as you go off to sleep, you're going to begin to manifest when you awaken into this reality. So you don't want to review all the things that you don't like, and all the things that aren't working, and all the stuff that upsets you, and all the stuff that you're mad at, and all the people that you resent, and all the facts of your life that are not the way you think that they should be. You don't want to be doing that unless you want more of that to manifest and show up in your life. Because when you awaken the divine mind, which can't make a distinction between what you think and what your reality is, if your thoughts are on, my life is really bad and terrible, Your subconscious mind's saying this over and over again. The universal subconscious mind, God, says, so that's what you want? And here's some more of it. And you'll continue to attract more and more and more of it. What you have to do is assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and the last 5 minutes especially, before you go off to sleep tonight, put into your consciousness, I am well, I am health, I am perfect health, I am healing, I am content, I am wealthy, I am positive, I am love, I am God. Even if you don't believe it, over and over again, use these words, I am. The words that God spoke to Moses. My name is I am, and that shall be my name for all future generations. And as you marinate in that, when you awaken, you will begin to attract more of what you have placed into your subconscious mind. That's why Serena said in here, the word blame is just not a word that we use. We are responsible for what we attract into our lives, and through our thoughts and our desires, we can create them. So there I was back in Turkey. So that's your assignment for tonight, by the way. Just the last 5 minutes before you go off to sleep. Begin to practice. I am living as if what you would like to attract is already an accomplished fact. In fact, the other quote from the book of Romans says, in the presence of him whom he believed God, who gives life to the dead, and hear these words, and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. You have to call those things which do not yet exist in your physical sense as though they did. You live from that place. That's how I healed myself of leukemia. It's gone. It's out of my life. It's no part of my life whatsoever. So there I was in Turkey, and this man was about to hand me a dirty piece of paper in this smelly place, hot place. And my subconscious mind training, which I had immediately came to it. I pulled back. This guy's dirty. Everybody's looking for a handout. Even in Turkey, for God's sake, somebody wants a tip and that kind of stuff that's been programmed into my subconscious thinking, which I'm not proud of, but in order to change it, in order to shift it, you have to first of all become aware of it. So I walked out, and I was on my way to give a lecture, which was being filmed. There's a whole big crowd there, and cameras everywhere, and here I am, this spiritual master, who's about to give a talk at the home of the mother of Jesus, for God's sake. And inside, I'm angry and going with this judgmental stuff. And I stop, because this is how you change your subconscious mind. First, you become aware of the thought, and then you begin to do something about the thought, and then you become aware of your behavior. And the most important thing is you change your behavior. In the recovery movement, we call it making amends. You make amends. You change your behavior as well as become conscious of the thought. And I turned around and I went back to the urinal. And I saw this man there who didn't speak any English. And I reached into my pocket and I had a 20-euro note in my pocket. That's about $30. That's all the cash that I had on me. And I came over to him, and I embraced him. I put my arms around him, and I put the 20-euro note into his hand, and I said, thank you. Thank you. Now, and I walked away, and I went and gave the talk, and I corrected it. So now, what I did is I did a course correction in my subconscious mind training, and that's how you have to do it. Now, this is what I wanted to tell you. As I'm reading The Impersonal Life, I'm asking the question over and over again, how do I find it? See, I'm going to write about this. I'm already writing another book. In fact, I'm writing 2 books. Because I'm fulfilling a dharma, a desire. It's why I'm here. I live on Maui. You guys all want to get to Maui. I leave Maui to come here. And people think, well, you must be because of how much money you're making. 100% of what I earn, I give away. 100%. Either to the government, it takes about half, or I have 8 children who help me out with that on a regular basis. But trust me, it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with this desire that gets placed into our hearts that we can't stop. It's what puts me on a plane. It's what flies me overnight and turn around and fly back so that I can get back to the writing. Because it's a desire that my human self has nothing to do with. And I'm asking the question over and over again, how do I find it? Now, there's 18 chapters in The Impersonal Life that was written by Joseph S. Benner, because when he passed away in 1940, his wife, he was a Lutheran minister from Akron, Ohio, and his wife wanted the world to know who this man was. And it's not consistent with so much of what the Lutheran Church teaches. So that's why he published it as anonymous. But then, it's the book, by the way, that Elvis Presley lived with. When he died, he had it with him. He said it's the only book that ever spoke to him. And I want to write, well, I know what I'm going to do. I don't know yet what I'm going to do with it, because I'm just listening and surrendering. But the 17th chapter, there's 18 chapters in this. Isn't that interesting? 18. One infinite source. 18. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. One infinite source. There are 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching. Infinite source. Once. The number 18 in Hebrew is what? Anybody? Hayam. Life. Life. The number 18. It's a very spiritual number. So it's a Friday morning. And I have a series of things that I have to do on Friday. One of them is to go to the bank. And my kids are coming, so they like cash. So I have to get some cash, I have to cash some checks, I have to, make some deposits, things like this. And there's a girl at the bank, her name is Cheyenne, and she has, I've had this little thing going with her for 2 years. She has 3 children that are under the age of 4, just like my mother did. Her husband has diabetes. He's very, very sick. And so I always go to her window. Now, I've never said anything to her about this at all, but always I've seen her with her children at different places on Maui and so on, and I know what's going on. And she's a teller supporting a family with a husband who can't work at this time. So every time after I do all the transactions, I take a couple of $100 bills, and I place them under her little computer thing there. And I've been doing it for a couple of years. I just, and she, because I know the thing is being filmed, and I'm not sure if what I'm doing is legal or illegal. I'm not doing anything wrong, but I mean, it's like there's cameras everywhere, and I don't want to get her into trouble. And so it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and she goes to lunch different times, starting about 11:15. Anytime between 11 and 1, she goes to lunch. And I am thinking about going to the bank, but I want to make sure that I get there in time to be able to see Cheyenne so that I can put this money under there, because I just feel after a couple of years she's probably become accustomed to it, and it's just something that she needs. And but we've never talked about it. I've never said I'm giving you money. It's not about me, any of this, okay? And I'm only telling you this for a very important reason, not to make myself look good or anything, but to illustrate that how do you connect, how do you communicate with this higher self, with this impersonal self, this thing that is doing all of this stuff, that is making your body do what it's going through and opening the flowers and so on. How do you find it? And I had such a compelling thing, and then I put it down. I said, well, maybe I'll go after lunch. But then what if she's not there? What if she's on her break? I don't know. I know she'll be there between 9 and 10, and then I stop. And I said, no, I've got other things I want to do. I'm doing these crazy coffee enemas. I don't even want to get into that, but it's... and I'm doing this whole Gerson therapy, which is a phenomenal thing. And It's going to start a new franchise called Starbutts. You know, it's yeah, rear entry only, no front doors. Just an idea I have. I'm just working on it, you know. Nothing says morning like Folgers in your butt, you know, in your cup. My kids laugh at me. They think it's all, but I feel great every time I do one. And I recommend you look at the Gerson therapy, by the way. It's a very powerful tool for overcoming cancers and so on. Anyway, just a side thing on it. But I've got this compelling desire to go to the bank at this time. Not because of anything with me, but to make sure that I get to see Cheyenne and give her this extra money that I'm sure uses. So I finally just say, the hell with it. I couldn't resist. I got it. I went downstairs. I got in the car and went over to the bank and got it all done so that I made sure. And she was there, and sure enough, I went there. And then there's another lady at the dry cleaner that I always stop to. Her name is Elsie, and she's about 4'10" and maybe 300 pounds. And she works in a dry cleaning plant where can you imagine how hot it is and sweaty in there? And I always go in there and give her about $100 and sometimes more. And I always put my arm around her because I don't think anybody ever does. And then I went back. And I picked up, and I was reading the 17th chapter, which is called Finding Me. And this is what it said. The best and the surest way you may know me, capital Me, M-E, is your highest self, your impersonal self speaking to you all the time. Every desire you have is placed there by it. The best and the surest way you may know me is when selfless love fills your heart. And there is a strong, compelling urge to help someone, to heal their ills, to relieve their suffering, to bring them happiness, to point out the true way. That is the actual feel of me within you, pushing the personality aside, using your mind and body for the purpose I created them, as avenues for the expression of my real nature, which is perfect love, the Christ of God, the one vitalizing, quickening, life-giving, strengthening, healing, all-supplying, all-informing power in the universe. If you will but turn to me and will carefully watch for and study these impressions which you are receiving every moment, and will learn to trust them, and thus to wait upon and rest in me, putting all your faith in me, I will guide you in all your ways. I will solve for you all your problems. I will make easy all your work, and you will be led among green pastures beside the still waters in life. I here promise you that you will not only very soon find me, but I will be to you an exhaustless fount of such wisdom and strength and help as your human mind now cannot possibly conceive. If you will devote but 1 hour each day to me alone, imagining and practicing the presence of me within you, if you will but seek me thus, making me first in your life, never resting until you do find me, it will not be long before you will become conscious of my presence, of my loving voice, speaking constantly from out of the depths of your heart. When you have a compelling urge to help someone, when you suspend your ego. When I flew from Maui to here, I flew to Dallas. We got in 45 minutes early, so we arrived at 4:15 a.m. the day before yesterday, 4:15 in the morning. I had a 4-hour layover to get the first flight to Austin at 8:15. So I have 4 hours. Now, when I was planning this trip, I was upset with the guy who made my travel arrangements because 4 hours after flying all night, sitting in an empty airport was not something that I really wanted to do. And I was thinking about what I'm going to do, so I took some things to read, but 4 hours, and it's on Maui time, that's the middle of the night. I mean, it's the middle of the night here, it's the beginning of the middle of the night there. Anyway, so I walk over to we landed at C, and I had to get to A. So I walked to A, and while I walk by gate A39, I see that there's a flight to Chicago at 5:30 a.m. And I just stood there for the longest time, looking at that flight. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's the only gate that's open at the whole airport. 5:30, people going to Chicago at 5:30. For some reason, I stood there for the longest time. Okay, and then I started to walk down towards my gate, which was A8. But for some reason, a desire was placed in my head to stop at gate 33. I don't know why. I said, well, I'll just sit here for the next hour, and I've got some reading to do, and I've got some outlining to do, and I want to think about what I want to speak about the next day here, right now, this morning. And a woman walks by, and she sits down right, just like a few seats away. And she looked at me, and she said, are you going to Chicago too? And I said, no, I'm not going to Chicago. I said, I'm going to Austin, but I'm going to be here for another week until the next flight. And she said, and she had sort of a heavy accent. I think she was from Europe someplace. And so she sat there for a while, and all of a sudden, this thing hits me again. This desire hits me. I had just looked at the flight going to Chicago at gate 39, and she's at gate 33, and she's going to Chicago. It must be, and I went over to her. She was very nervous about me approaching her at 4 o'clock in the morning in the Dallas airport, and nobody else is around anywhere. She just kind of gets back. I understood that. And she said, I said to her, you're going to the Chicago? Yeah. She said, yeah, it's right here. It's coming in gate 33. I said, but it's 5 o'clock. There's nobody here. She said, no, but it's 5. Then she just sat there. She was comfortable. And I took her hand, and I walked her down to the monitor there, and I looked at the flight to Chicago. I said, it's gate 39. She said, no, I'm on flight 90. I said, yeah, it says flight 90 to Chicago, American Airlines. It's at gate 39. You're at the wrong gate. You better get down to that gate. And then she just took off and ran, and she was gone. Now, I tell you that story because, like, in this time that I'm there, this desire, first of all, to stop and look at this flight to Chicago and study it for the longest time, and make the connection and think, now I've got to help this woman to get to Chicago. She's going to be sitting here and miss her flight, and so on. So that was one of the things that happened in there. Then I went over to buy a banana when the place opened at 6 o'clock. And there's a girl in there who's got army fatigues on. And she had just flown in. I don't know where she was flying to, but she was a military active duty person, and she was getting herself. It was at a Dunkin' Donuts place, okay, and she needed to hear this talk too about gluten and all of that, but she really needed to hear it. She was ordering her donut and ordering whatever else she ordered there. It came to $7 or $8, and I just stepped in front of her. I said, I'd really like to take care of this. And I said, here, the banana and whatever she wants. And I put my arms around her and thanked her for her service and all of the wonderful things that the military does to keep us all safe. I was in it for 4 years. I know about that. And so now, it's like in a 4-hour delay, I have two desires placed into my head. It wasn't my human self that placed that desire to get that woman to her flight. It wasn't my human self that placed that desire to do something nice for this girl. It was whenever there's a thought in there that the impersonal you is always speaking to you. And whenever it's compelling, and you feel like you have to do something. Like I could have just sat there and let that lady just sit there and think, well, she knows what she's doing, and she's a little bit intimidated by me talking to her anyway, and just let it go. But it was so overwhelming, and she has no idea that, had that desire not been placed in my head, she would have missed her flight, and who knows, and so on. So it's like getting to this place in our awareness that every desire that we have, particularly, now every mother in this room knows what I'm talking about. Because that's what the Tao teaches us, that we forget about ourselves and we just offer. It's what a nursing mother does. It's like, I just give you of my body, and it doesn't make any difference how uncomfortable I am or whatever. when that overwhelming, compelling desire to be of service to someone else, that's your highest self saying, this is your Dharma. I will lead you to a higher place, a place of love. And I've asked my daughter, because it's just a little bit after 12 and I have a few more minutes to go, I've asked Sky if she'll come up. And there's a song I'd love her to close this, this presentation with. It's a song I don't so much want you to, I mean, she's going to sing this a cappella, which is just amazing, her voice and what she does. But the words to this song are so powerful. They're everything I've been attempting to convey to you here this morning. The song is called The Greatest Love of All. And it was, of course, sung by the great Whitney Houston, who had one of the greatest voices of all time. Just a few days before she passed away, I even said to this guy, I really feel like I need to contact Whitney. And then I didn't follow through on it. And 2 days later, I don't know that I had anything to do with it, but seriously, I mean, when you have these overwhelming desires to reach out and serve someone, and you can't get it out of your head, and you just can't get it out of you, and it's not for you, and it's not how much you're going to make, or it's not, it becomes overwhelming. So this is my beautiful daughter Sky singing Fearlessly. Are you singing Fearlessly?
Of course.
Well, this is one of the things we had talked about many times, because she's been on stage with me since she was 8 years old, traveling around the world with me singing. And I've always taught her, I said, everybody, there's a lot of people with great voices, but you have to sing fearlessly. So my beautiful daughter Sky is singing